We look at the ways that we devalue the things that are priceless, like life. I mean,
Ooh.
our country just for the third time vetoed the humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza.
Jesus is telling another parable, and this one might be rated R. I'm not sure. Reverend Thorne, welcome back. Here we are looking at Mark chapter 12, verses 1 all the way to 17. So we got the parable of the wicked tenants, and then some questions about paying taxes, which, by the way, it's tax season, everybody. So what's going on in these texts, and how are you even beginning to hold all this as you think about a sermon for Sunday?
Um, I don't have a good answer to that question. I will say pay your taxes. Yeah, you don't want to mess with Caesar or the IRS for that matter. I don't think this is a text telling us to not pay our taxes. It's a troubling text. And I think that's why you started the way you started about the X-rated nature of it, the violence, the feralness of the people, the way they, in the end, jump on the landowner's son and just brutally murder him. It's also putting me in mind of this child who was recently killed in their school. I think I want to lift them up. Nex, Nex, trans child of God who was attacked by classmates and brutally attacked and died from their injuries. Um, so I guess maybe where I'm going is something to do with the feralness of us meaning humans, and how we are not able to hold the folks that God sends our way or puts on our path. Certainly are some folks who say this tracks with what happens when God sends Jesus, that we are not able to hold that great love, that great light, and that we turn on, attack, and kill the precious one that God has sent in our midst. But I don't know what the foothold is in this text, where the good news is exactly. I don't know that it's so apparent. Maybe you have some
Yeah.
thoughts.
Oh, I mean, many of the same. It's jarring because it's not the storytelling Jesus we're used to. It's not the "come let the little children come to me" Jesus. It's not the let me tell you about God is love and hooray. It's this is this,
Yeah.
but I mean, there is elements of God is love you can find in anything Jesus says, but this definitely seems like it's a spotlight on our human condition and just what is the mess that we keep making and why. And maybe it's just poking at that. Why do we keep doing what we do? Why do we keep tearing down things that could be good and beautiful simply because we knock things down? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
tricky.
And there's a question in the latter part of the scripture that says, "Why are you trying to trap me?" That did something for me. It jumped out in a way that has not jumped out before.
Hmm.
And as we're sitting here talking, I am thinking about that, the trapping of love, why we're not able to kind of let it be free, why we need to sort of control it, box it in, make it say a thing or do a thing or look a certain way. I think there are a lot of parallels for that in the news right now. It doesn't really give me an in or maybe an end, an opening or a beginning, but there's something interesting in that question that Jesus poses.
Yeah, that's right there in verse 13. They sent to him some Pharisees and some Herodians to trap him in what he said. And that's where they're trying to trip him up with the whole who should we give the money to? And that's
Right.
his whole little like, well, whose face is on it? Give to Caesar's what is Caesar's, give to God's what is God, which is such a lovely, rhetorical turn because all of it's God's. So he's not denying that we should give to God what is God's, but he's saying, okay, this little thing, the empire can, pretend they can play God where they think they're God, but really we know who's actually in control. I mean, echoing back to the Psalms, the earth is the Lord and everything in it. It feels like it's a fun like, haha, like a little verbal fencing match he's got going on there almost.
Yes, and I wonder if what you've just landed on gives us some sort of a foothold. There's a way in which our focus on the money and other things in our lives sort of shows the way we're missing. like it's going over our head what's really important. Sure, give the money to Caesar. Like, who cares? You made money. It's really fake. It doesn't there's nothing in it that's tied to who God is or your salvation or the bigger issues of life and death. This trans child who was recently killed, or this son of the vineyard owner who was killed. Money is not going to bring them back or save them or save you. So sure, give it to Caesar. The thing that you're missing is so much bigger than the things that you're worrying about. Yeah, I have given you my heart, my precious child, the vineyard owner and God, and this is what you've done with this priceless thing that I've given you. So maybe there's something in there. Again, I think as you were suggesting, that turns the mirror back on us. And it's not about the money, it's about you all and your inability to recognize what's really valuable.
Oh, yeah, both of these sections then really do hold up a mirror to the people, the humanity of
Yeah.
it all. Like we are the ones who just keep, you know, imposing violence where there doesn't need to be violence,
Yeah.
and we keep idolizing money when that is just this fabricated metaphor that humans share, that it only has value because we give it value. It doesn't really have value in the way that life and breath and creation has value.
Right. And we look at the ways that we devalue the things that are priceless, like life. I mean,
Ooh.
our country just for the third time vetoed the humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. And now there are people saying, I don't know if you've read this, that there is this plan afoot to turn that land into these luxury apartment buildings on the
Ugh.
Mediterranean Sea. And I'm like, wow, this is what we're doing. So again, looking at the money and what is possible if we're able to get this land and turn it into luxury apartment buildings. Sure, will kill tens of thousands, if not millions, push out of land to have access to oil, to have access to
Yeah.
the soil so that we can build something that's going to make us more money. Talk about feral, right? Talk about people who are just hell bent on something that is, counter again to the pricelessness and preciousness of life. It's like, how did we get here?
That's just chilling in that parallel of just thinking what's happening in Gaza and just the devaluing life and then just writing checks and money and give to whatever empire, whatever belongs to. Ooh, yeah, there's so
Right,
much
right,
that just feels like they're just right by each other. And you can't help but read a text like this and then just be aware of the world we're in and
right.
not see those kinds of overlaps. Yeah. That's the
Exactly.
danger of this book. We don't just read it as like good literature. It actually still speaks to whatever's happening in the context around us. And that sometimes gets a little risky.
It's very risky. I want to say for those who can't hear what we're saying about Gaza unless we also say the attacks of October 7th were atrocious, and they were atrocious, and there are so many atrocities going on. Folks in Sudan continue to be slaughtered, and the list is breathtaking. Places in the world where life is being devalued. And the mentioning of one does not cancel or rule out the atrocity of another or the atrocity of the ones that are to come, because this seems to be our pattern. That's something else in the text that God or that the landowner, who some say is the stand-in for God, repeatedly sends life, sends a precious person to try and turn the folks around, tries to get them to repent. And I think it's the son the third time. So it's also powerful to think about how God doesn't give up on us and continues to try to send, well, maybe they'll get this one. Maybe they'll hear it differently from this person. In our human condition, as you suggested, just can't seem to get it.
Hmm. Hmm.
2024 years in, still can't.
Yeah, we have a good history. I mean, the earliest story in this text, right after the garden, we get a little bit of murder with these two brothers. It seems like that sort of conflict between, farmers and shepherds hasn't stopped. It just plays out in different ways ongoing in our society. Conflicts over territory, over ideology, and too often it leads to, you know, the end of someone's life. It leads to just, whether it's an assault, murder, genocide, all the variations. And yeah, maybe the good news is that God isn't giving up on us even when we keep messing it up again and again and again.
Yes, I think that is the good news. Um, and I think the that maybe there's something in that for us as well, in terms of not giving up, in terms of not
Yeah.
losing hope, in terms of um, trying, like the landowner, to keep trying to help one another to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these texts are always nice and light. Isn't it great when the Bible's just a bunch of little Sunday school lessons for 6-year-olds? Nope, just kidding. This book has, you know, all sorts of depths to it. And as always, we want to hear what everyone else is thinking and feeling and scheming with this. So leave a comment below with how these texts, the parable of the wicked tenants and the whole question about paying taxes, where does this land for you? Drop a comment. Use this if you're leading a Bible study. And then, I mean, of all these reasons, there's a good reason to show up on Sunday just to see what's going to come from this.
Yes.
Um, it's going to be a great sermon, obviously, but there's still a little bit of, you know, stirring to do in this soup before it's ready to be poured onto our plates, I think.
A lot of stirring. I have no idea where this one's gonna go.
As always, you can join us before worship. We have open Bible study in the building and online. We talk about this text there, so that's a great way to kind of build off of this video and come and join us before worship even begins. Join us for worship, 11 a.m. on Sunday. You can join us in the Upper West Side, West Harlem, in the building or online, trcnyc.org. And then stick around if you're online for virtual coffee hour. We'll get to talk with Reverend Thorne after worship on Zoom about how all of its feeling. So we're gonna just talk about this text a whole lot. It's gonna be maybe not good, but like meaningful and
For
rich
sure.
and like necessary for the world we live in. So hope to see you at some of that, everybody, and always good to chat about all this with you. Talk to you on the next one.